So, good evening. The mental illness of communism. Another great title of a book. It's not a book, actually. I'm just saying it could be a book, titled The Mental Illness of Communism. A book that probably I will never write because in my intellectual journey, if I had any, I had decided to write books in other subjects, which I know are much more needed. Okay, but today's video is going to be about that interesting subject. And the reason why I decided to make this is because I was watching an interview, a very long interview, with Thomas Sowell, intellectual writer, economist, professor, and many other things. But it doesn't matter a lot, because what we are going to talk today about is something he was saying, which is a simple story of his experience as a young man living in New York City like myself. And what he's going to say isn't right or wrong. He's just telling you what was the experience he had, which is very interesting because he was talking in this interview about communism and how he got into reading Marx and into Marxism. And he told the story of his experience as a Afro-American living here in the United States decades ago in New York City. And he could see all the differences, economical differences between people and different situations they had. And the very interesting thing is that he pointed out at this turning point in his mind where we can clearly see how communism is a mental illness, how actually mental illnesses work, how an idea can infect the minds of people and spread the way that one spread, the way National Socialism, Nazism spread. For example, if you read the description of my company, if you know me very well, you will see that I write about Nazis and National Socialism as one of the worst pandemics ever seen, because mental illnesses, ideas can spread like a pandemic. And Thomas Sowell was explaining that he had this experience while he was living in New York City, where he observed all these differences between people. You had people that was very poor and they seemed to be trapped in their situation, and then you have the rest of people that went ahead in life. They were living a different kind of existence, of course, and a different kind of quality of life. So the very interesting thing is that he mentioned that at that point he started having questions in his head. This is the turning point, the psychosis point, the insanity point, which luckily he went out of it, but he explained what was his situation, right? He started having this question, why there's so much inequality, why there's so many differences, right? And when your mind starts making these questions and you suffer about it, you're a self-conscious person, you're intellectual, you like to think, and you suffer because of what you see, and you start wondering, and you can't answer that question, right? Your mind starts looking for an answer. So here comes the very interesting part, which he mentions that at that time, one of the few writing materials, one of the few essays, the few books he found explaining this very big question he had was he bought a very cheap encyclopedia or some sort of book, and he encountered Marx and Marxism. And the thing about that very popular literature that also was a business because it was being sold in many libraries around the world, is that it gave an answer to that concern of why there's so much inequality. And I'm gonna make a parenthesis and stop here. There's a very nice joke that said that the difference between a communist and a capitalist is that a communist is somebody that read Karl Marx, and the difference with a capitalist is that the capitalist is somebody that read Karl Marx and he understood what he meant also. And the very interesting story from Thomas Sowell is that he found Marxism, and it was the only written material he could find back in those days, which answered this very big worry he had of why so many people was doing so well and it was so rich, and while the rest of the world was struggling. And the answer that Marxism gave to him was that the bourgeois, the rich, are evil people, and they take from those who don't have. And that's the reason why there's so much inequality, and they try to control, and all that bullshit, all that delusion. And it's very, very interesting, right? All that delusion versus the literature that states that if you want to become rich, you have to serve others. You have to find win-win situations. You have to, in many occasions, you become rich by feeding millions of people, by developing a product that changes the life of millions of people, by selling millions of cell phones, for example, or inventing the cell phone, whatever, right? But Marxism didn't appreciate that. So it's very interesting because Sowell said that he had these questions. Why there's so much inequality? And the only answer he found at that time was Marxism, which used the trick of demonizing the rich, so they could create demons around you, and you will feel more attracted towards his books, and you wanted to buy them because he was selling you that you are surrounded by demons, which is completely exciting, and makes you talk about this book and makes you want to buy it and gift it to people. It was a very big success. Okay, but it was like Harry Potter, talking about kind of fictitious characters, sometimes based on reality a little bit, but fictitious at the end, a delusion. So this is the mental illness of communism. Sowell was describing so perfectly how a mind can become absolutely psychotic because it has questions that needs to answer, it's suffering, and it gets fed with the wrong sources of information. Or in the case of Sowell, we are talking about decades ago when there was no internet, okay? So basically the only source of information available was the Bible, was Marx, or many famous books out there. And sadly, most people in those times, when they had these concerns, they fell into the literature of Marx. And they were very ignorant and very weak people that couldn't access other sources of information. And this causes a mental illness. This causes your mind to vibrate in a direction and go into a sequence of books, because first Marx takes you to other communist writers, and then it gets worse and worse and worse, and your mind never deviates and absorbs other sources and other opinions, right? And the good news of the internet nowadays is that when a person has these concerns, they will go to the internet. And in the internet, they might hear Marx, but they might also hear other sources of information that have different point of views, which is extremely, extremely valuable, because now this illness, this very dangerous illness that caused the death of millions of people in the gulags, or because of the mess that the Soviet Union and other communist countries did, it was a very, very serious mental illness, very close to what Nazism was, which was very, very much aggressive like this one, or even worse, because they want to kill. They look for killing people. Like, they didn't kill people with inefficiency and starving them because they had a stupid idea and a stupid model of government. They killed people, Nazism, because they targeted them. Okay, but these mental illnesses, perhaps nowadays, will stop existing, because when people have these very important questions that cause them pain, and they go and study, the first resource they could have is having a country that has a good education system, which isn't the case, sadly. We are quite deteriorated on that side. I'm sorry, America. I don't know other countries. I think other countries might be quite the same, especially in the financial literacy front. That's why I write books like this one. Okay, but what I'm trying to say is that nowadays people, when they try to answer these questions and they don't trust in their universities, which are so deteriorated, they might go to the internet, and in the internet they might be they might have the unlucky event of finding Karl Marx and his opinions, but at the same time they will find other sources one click away for free. You just need time and openness to check different sources of information, and don't be so stupid and religious of diving straight ahead into one type of literature. If you have the openness, you are one click away of listening to other sources, listening to what Adam Smith said, and other writers that might explain much better why people get wealthy in a very different way than the ways Karl Marx and many other communist writers, much worse than him, underlined, okay, and argumented and all of that. So that will be the video for today. I'm not going to share you the interview with Thomas Sowell, because probably you are not interested in watching 50 minutes interviews. Probably you are here for the short content. And I already made the mistake of making this video too long. But I guess you will have much more fun listening to 13 minutes of video, 14, than having to get immersed into a 40-50 minutes interview or 50 minutes classes, So it's your lucky day. I'm not gonna mention this interview that was made to Thomas Sowell, but I will repeat again and finish this video. He was explaining his experience when he was young, and he was having all these doubts of why there's so much inequality. And sadly, his mind in those times, it was very limited. He wasn't accepted in any fancy university yet, and his budget was limited, and also he was limited to the libraries he had in his world in New York City back in those days. So sadly, the only literature he had on hand was Karl Marx, and that sadly framed his research, framed his view, framed his political views, and almost converted him into a religious creature that had the ideas he had, the communist views he had in some way, or the Marxist views. Or even worse, nowadays we have neo-Marxism, which luckily is getting weaker, perhaps thanks to the internet, as I argumented. Because nowadays, thanks to the internet, when we are researching about these things, imagine we repeat that point when Thomas Sowell was getting his first literature answering the questions he had about inequality. We are one click away of reading other sources and other opinions, so we can get a better idea and a more complete framework and a bigger picture before even coming to opinions. Okay, so thank you for watching. I hope you like this video. Remember to leave a like, comment, check my books if you want. I didn't make this video to promote my book. I just found this subject very, very interesting, and a very interesting title also. The mental illness of communism. And I wish you all the best. Have a good night.